There's two very different opinions on this table. On one hand, we've got Harry, who thinks there's too much made of that Liverpool Forest game. But on the other hand, we've got Kweku, who completely disagrees. So, Kweku, you put forward this ridiculous sales pitch that you're going to put in.
No, it's not a sales pitch. It's just that what I don't like is fans of teams that are big teams complaining about there being noise around their teams when there's a shock result. So Man United fans complaining that people are criticising them when they lose 3-0 at home against Liverpool. Or Liverpool fans complaining that people are making too much of a deal of Nottingham Forest going to Anfield and beating them. How much did we make of Van Dijk's incredible record at Anfield and the fact that Liverpool never lose at Anfield? So when a side like Nottingham Forest go there and turn you over and deserve to actually probably win by more, then expect there to be noise. And I don't think there needs to be a referendum on Arne Slot's start at Liverpool. He's been incredible. We've talked about communication. We've talked about how quickly he settled in and how direct he's been when he's talked to the media. But I think that result against Nottingham Forest was a very poor one. And where we were having conversations about Liverpool winning the league and where we make so much of a deal when Arsenal drop points against Brighton, when Liverpool lose at home against Nottingham Forest and people making them title contenders, which I did as well, we've got to make a big deal out of it because Nottingham Forest at the beginning of the season, no one had them pegged to be unbeaten at this point. No one had them pegged to go to Anfield and get a win, and they did that. And so I understand why there's a narrative and there's discourse and there's noise around it.
I just think that this is the Premier League, and the thing we love about the Premier League is that teams even further down the table are capable of turning up anywhere and getting a result. Because even when you look at that Nottingham Forest side that turned up at Anfield, it's stacked full of quality. They brought Callum Hudson-Odoi off of the bench. Now, in years gone by, that could never have happened. A club like Forest bringing a player of that calibre onto a game late. I just look at Liverpool's season so far, clean sheet after clean sheet after clean sheet. And then they concede one goal and lose because they couldn't break down Nuno's low block. For me, Nuno is one of the best in the business, by the way, at setting up teams to play that way. It reminded me of his Wolves team. Watching the way that Forest approached that game. And then Liverpool go in midweek to Milan, to the San Siro. It's not the greatest Milan side, granted, but they go there and they absolutely batter them. And you just think to yourself, it was a whole load of much made out of nothing, really, that Forest result.
I think with context in mind, because Liverpool went and played the way they did against AC Milan, this argument makes a lot of sense. However, if Liverpool went and drew against AC Milan, your argument also makes a lot of sense. I'm sort of sat in between and I'm looking at this start to the season, I'm going, I would pretty much agree that's a fair start for Liverpool. That's how they've played in games, and those are the results they've deserved overall. The one thing that's been really impressive is Liverpool's midfield three. I thought Klopp struggled to find a balance, and then Gravenberch's been outstanding. Got man of the match against AC Milan again. And next to him, I think Szoboszlai is starting to find his feet a little bit because Liverpool are using him in the right way. The front three is where I'm a little bit confused or a little bit unsure. Salah's, he's unbelievable against AC Milan, the things he was doing. Then there's Jota and Gakpo, or Jota and Diaz, or maybe Darwin Núñez. Where are you with this Liverpool front three? Because Gakpo played really well against AC Milan.
He did. He showed some brilliant touches, and he looked a lot more nimble than he did look at the back end of last season. And like I say, Salah always starts. Jota's probably your best player down the middle, and Diaz has probably had the best start to the season apart from Salah. So you've got loads of options.
And there's Chiesa.
And Chiesa as well, who made a cameo appearance against AC Milan. There's loads of options. I struggle to figure out what your best three is. At the moment, I would still stick with Salah, Jota down the middle, and Diaz. But Gakpo's definitely knocking on the door. And to have that option off the bench and to have Darwin Núñez, who I haven't really mentioned in terms of starting, off the bench as well with something to prove, just speaks to the strength and depth that Liverpool got in their front line. Talking about the midfield, me and you've talked about Gravenberch quite a lot in terms of can he do this role, and so far he's proven it. When you signed him from Bayern Munich, he's a player that had such a high ceiling, but it's whether he can adapt to the Premier League. And I feel like having McAllister in there, that's the big key. McAllister,
the babysitter. I always say the hand holder.
100%. He can do a bit of everything, shows for it all the time, makes the right decisions. Different, but do you know the role that Pascal Gross played for Brighton last season? I think McAllister kind of does that in terms of he's the one communicating to Bosley and Gravenberch, and he's also the one just providing those passes and options at the right times to ensure that midfield's ticking. And for the longest time, Liverpool used to bypass the midfield, had incredible wing backs, had incredible forwards. The midfield's just functional with Ronaldo, Fabinho and Henderson. But right now, you see Liverpool play through the midfield a little bit more. And people talked about Liverpool maybe being a bit more monotonous this season, a bit more boring. But that's because I think you've got a bit more element of control in your game. And that comes from McAllister being that tempo setter and Gravenberch really finding his feet in a number 6 position, which everybody talked about Liverpool going out there and bringing in somebody for 100 mil. Seems like you had the solution right there.
It just goes to show that, doesn't it? We obsess over personnel. And actually, with the same personnel, Arne Slot's found much better balance to the midfield. That's not to criticise Klopp, great manager for Liverpool. Nobody's denying that for a second. But I look at the midfield and it just looks a bit different. You mentioned McAllister's role. At times, they sit with a double pivot, which you wouldn't often see under Klopp because there was this want to go and press really aggressively and high up the pitch, which meant that you needed to push your 2 8s on to be a part of that. So I think that's played a massive part. I think Liverpool have had a good start to the season overall. And on the forward thing, I don't think that you need to obsess over who the starting 3 is. I think against different opposition, Arne Slot will probably favour different players. I think if you're going to be taking on a fullback constantly, I'd rather it was Diaz than Gakpo, for example. If you're going to go a bit more direct, then I quite like the idea of Darwin Núñez being in there somewhere. So he's got options. And I think now that the Champions League's kicked in as well, you're going to need to rotate. I think we need to adjust our mindset to understand that more than ever, football's a squad game now. Yeah. And it doesn't need to be, that's my 3. It can be, that's my 6, and I'm going to use them in any way that I want.
What I would say, though, off the back of that, is that I think in Liverpool, you've got players that believe that if they're at another club, they'd be starting. We know Darwin Núñez has got a lot of confidence in himself. We know his issues and his shortcomings, but he's a player that can be effective. Scored a few goals last season. Gakpo's a player that was coveted by many a top club when Liverpool signed him. And so it's not an issue. Football's a squad game. Liverpool are in multiple competitions and they're going to need to use that squad. But I think they have got players that believe they should be starting. And that's where not an issue will come, but that's where I think the man management will come in from Arne Slot in terms of keeping these players happy. Because like we mentioned, Salah always starts. And then you've got 4 or 5 players vying for 2 positions.
On the other hand, you've got Bournemouth, who obviously don't have the luxury Liverpool do to rotate constantly. They obviously lost their main man up front. And Evan Nilsson's come in not quite settled as what they would have hoped, but it's kind of expected. It's not an easy transition to come to the Premier League. Liverpool's issue is against low blocks, which obviously Nuno specialises in. Areola is not going to play that way. So in a lot of ways, do you go Bournemouth maybe should tinker the way they start this game? Because if they press Liverpool play through them. Yeah,
I think you need to be humble enough as a manager of a club like Bournemouth to understand that your way is your way, yes, and you want to be able to implement that 90-95% of the time. But there are certain places where you won't be able to, and Anfield is one of those places. I think Iraola has a good system in place. He has a really good sort of structure, and it goes back to last season as well when people were saying at the start of the campaign, this is not working, he needs to go. Everybody could see if you watched them closely, and I paid particular attention to them at that point. And I thought, no, there's something there. And I think, look, if you look through the squad, there's a few interesting players in there, but their resources aren't comparable to the likes of Liverpool. So for that reason, you need to understand that you've got to adapt. If they don't, I think this is going to be a really entertaining game with plenty of goals. And I hope it is for the sake of us neutrals watching on.
Watch Symeou versus Robertson. I think Semenyo's their outlet, and I feel like if they have to sit a few yards deeper than they'd like to, or they usually do, I think Symeou could be really effective on the counter-attack for them. He's been involved in the majority of good things for them this season, and he caused Chelsea big issues on the weekend. Evan Nilsson's a man that he missed a penalty, and it's so important for strikers when they come to this league to get off the mark, and he hasn't done that yet. And when you're going to Anfield against a Liverpool side that aren't going to give you too many opportunities, if you don't take your opportunities, then you're going to struggle. And I don't think he's yet got the confidence that he can score goals in the Premier League. And I think that might be their shortcomings. I think they will create 1 or 2 opportunities. It's whether they take them. And this Liverpool side, they're just going to dominate the ball, and they are going to take the chances with those attacking options. So it's going to be a tough night for Bournemouth.
All right, let's have a look at predictions. The aggregate score in the last 12 matches, by the way, is Liverpool 39, Bournemouth 6. So if anyone's backing Bournemouth to win here, I'll be shocked.
There was that 9-0, weren't there?
Yeah. Well, literally every shot was going in. Yeah. I'll go first. I think Liverpool will win 2-0, but very comfortable. I think they'll take the foot off the gas as early as possible, with obviously Champions League football in mind, having just played, and then probably rotate a little bit.
I'm going to go Liverpool 4, Bournemouth 1. I back Bournemouth to score. If you look at their XG, they've accrued the 4th most XG this season in the whole league, which shows you that even though they're not necessarily putting the ball in the back of the net, they are a threat in a lot of ways. So I back them to score, and I'm going to go Liverpool 4, Bournemouth 1.
I'm going for a 3-0 Liverpool win. if Trent starts, watch a masterclass. I think he's going to play very, very well in this one.